This is Resistance is Futile: How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind by Coulter. I don't like the phrase that they lost their mind, because that's like being insane, which I think is a myth, and I also think, regardless of whether it was a myth, having left-wing politics is a different thing than being schizophrenic or OCD or whatever else. Like, even if those things were valid ideas, they're not the correct idea for describing bad politics. I'm Elliot Temple. You can find me at elliotttemple.com and find my websites and my newsletter sign up and my YouTube and stuff. Chapter 1: The Resistance. Trump is Hitler times infinity. There does seem to be a lot of anti-Trumpism, which is different than having positive positions. Which actually reminds me of one of their so-called positive positions, socialism. Which by and large, one, they don't actually advocate, and two, which is basically anti-capitalism, the suppression of freedom and economic planning and liberalism. And they call themselves liberal after doing that. Like, socialism is not an economic system. It is some smart people try to figure it out somehow, and they can't because they don't have the brain power of the millions of people who they've controlled the lives of and prevented from doing economic planning. And the hypocrisy is one of the results of not having positive principles, just hating things. Vulgarity sure can't be it. What's the supremacy clause refer to? Oh, that state courts have to obey federal laws, basically. Right, the courts have a bunch of leftist activists as judges, in the lower courts especially, and they keep, like, refusing to obey the president, kind of ridiculously sometimes. Anyway, vulgarity sure can't be it. We've had vulgar people as politicians before. And if someone was going to complain about vulgarity, you would expect it to be the Christians. Okay, this is not accurate. Anne is exaggerating to make her case. They talked about Bush Hitler. They called him a monkey and stuff. How Bush's grandfather helped Hitler's rise to power. The left's limited outrage at Hitler comparisons. Democrats on the Nazi card. Yeah. It's not like they were nice to Bush. They really weren't. Yeah, they have this issue with Cruz as well. They can't really call Cruz stupid. So they call him, like, creepy and weird. That's Ted Cruz. What the hell? I have no idea what she's referring to, and there's no site. I don't know why Anne uses words like this in the very beginning of her book that's meant for the mainstream reader that I don't know, and I'm sure most people don't know this word. Let's see how many Google hits it has. Parvenu. More than I expected. But I've literally never heard it before. Right, it's a French word, not an English word. Why is Anne using a fancy French word? She doesn't like the French. This seems kind of fair. Like, is building a wall to keep out the illegal immigrants really the end of the world? Obama's reputation is false, by the way. So is Trump's. Trump is not as dumb as people think, and Obama was dumb. Not like... There's different types of dumb. He was good at pretending to be smart, I guess. I mean, he fooled a lot of people. But, like, he wasn't much of a thinker. And, like, Trump actually has a bunch of good books. I mean, I don't know how much they're ghostwritten exactly, but, like, presumably Obama has ghostwriters too. Worse than 9/11. That's what the Trump election was? Jesus, these people have no shame. This is all like social dynamics analysis, but like she's not wrong. It's not like the liberals, the so-called liberals, debate the political issues and have serious positions on economics and freedom and so on. They are actually like the party of people who are more interested in social dynamics than values. They're the ones using peer pressure and trying to deplatform people and treating everything as a social game, a popularity contest, trying to like shut down dissent rather than the group of reason who has actual arguments. Trump anxiety, no citation. Authoritarian personality. What has he done? He's been a moderate. So if you haven't seen it, you go to my blog and then you go to list all posts and then you search for Trump and there's several posts and let's just moderate. Here we go. Donald Trump is a moderate. I'll put this in my notes. And his actual positions and actions are pretty moderate. He hasn't like done anything all that spectacular. People just get really mad anyways. It's partly that they don't pay attention. Like the media tells them he's not a moderate, so they think he's not a moderate. They don't do things like read his books or watch the political debates and see what he's actually like, which is what I did. And watch some of his rallies. Like there were plenty of ways to get first-hand information on him. And you could read his policy papers from his website during the campaign and see what his proposals were, and then see for yourself if they were actually like ridiculous or moderate. Or like you can be a non-moderate and be awesome. Like I'd prefer someone who was more extreme in certain ways. Like you could be better than a moderate, but like Trump is just a moderate. Like he's mediocre, he's not great, and he's not awful. And somehow he's seen as like this extremist that people really, really hate. It just has nothing to do with the facts. Obama, on the other hand, was not seen as like a super out there extremist, even though he actually was. If you want to know about Obama, you go, what is it? Yeah, this is the book. Right, Trump got votes from people who felt lied to and dismissed, that their concerns were being ignored, their values were being ignored, they weren't getting the things they tried to vote for. So they went with Trump, who has done some of the things he said he would do. There's no wall yet, but he has promised again to build the wall recently, I think. So we'll see. But we've never had an authoritarian personality in the White House. What about Obama? I'm sure there's like dozens of them. And I don't see what's authoritarian about Trump. He's a businessman. Like he didn't spend his life trying to have political power over people. Like career politicians are trying to be rulers. Trump like went on TV and ran businesses. That's not authoritarian. So I kind of think he's like the least authoritarian personality we've had in the White House for a long time, probably. Because he's just not a career politician. He didn't spend his life trying to gain power over other people and be in the position to tell them what to do. He's tried to be a businessman where he hires people and deals with them on a voluntary basis. Businessmen are not rulers. It's a totally different thing, and that's where he comes from. And that's like what he chose to pursue in his life. Like money doesn't give you authority over people. You can't tell them what to do. You can offer them money to work for you and they can say no if they don't want to do it. It's a completely different thing than being a politician where you're trying to be in the position to make laws. So compared to all the other presidents, like Trump is just much less of a politician, much less interested in making the laws and telling people what to do and that kind of thing. Oh look, they're gonna call him Hitler. Right, Trump has been a suck-up to like various moderate like establishment Republicans, and he hasn't been very spectacular. He's done okay, he's done some good things. But he's been hanging out with, like, some of the worst Republicans a bunch. Who are just, like, seen as normal and moderate, not, like... The ones that the media and the left hates are, like, Ron Paul or Ted Cruz or something. And those are not the ones that Trump has been sucking up to. And yet they just hate the hell out of Trump. Because they wanted to keep power. Like, they thought that they had control of the country, and that Obama's presidency would be continued with a successor, and they would just keep doing what they've been doing, and they really wanted to do that. They thought they were making progress on socialized medicine and quite a bunch of other anti-American agendas. And they really wanted to radically transform the country, and it got interrupted by Trump, and they're mad. And they don't treat politics as a gentleman's game. They play to win. Like, a lot of the masses don't, but, like, the leftist leaders, like, they're serious about winning and getting their way, and that's what they're so mad about. And a lot of the damage Obama did is being undone, and a lot of the, like, crimes he committed and treacherous actions he undertook are coming out because we have other people in power now. But if it had just stayed Democrat controlled, like, these things would never have come out. Like, if it was 8 years old, some of the bullshit Obama did, it wouldn't have come out when the next president took office, probably. And what if the Dems had power for, like, 16 more years after Obama? Like, whatever he did would be, like, long forgotten. So that was part of their plan, was just literally to keep power, like, cheat, and then keep power so you don't get caught for cheating and you can immunize yourself. And they're mad to have lost power. And if you want to read more about that, this is a particularly good book. Wait, this might not be the right one. Oh, it's Take No Prisoners. I think this one's good, but that's just like a pamphlet or something. I think it's called Take No Prisoners. Yeah. And if you want more on what the left is like today, you should learn about George Soros and Saul Alinsky. And this one is particularly good. I forget exactly how much Alinsky stuff it has, so I'll get you another link. Or I'll just move this up. Anyway, you can read this to find about it. See, two of his most notable modern-day disciples are Hillary and Obama. And if you don't know what that's talking about, you should read this and see what kind of ideas he had and what they learned from him. It's quite a bit of information, but much less than a book. This stuff is very important if you want to know what's going on with these kind of people. That website, Discover the Networks, is really good for getting info on some leftist figures and groups and stuff. Yeah. Like, I'm not impressed by everything about Trump, certainly, and neither is Coulter. But this is completely different than, like, Hitler or an authoritarian. Or even an extremist. Right, that's getting a highlight. It relates to my own ideas about overreaching. Is that it? Yeah, here we go. Like, it's one thing to make mistakes or not know things. It's another to, like, overestimate yourself. So you're, like, think you're more effective than you are. Then you get into real trouble. Or, like, you think you can do more than you can do, so then you aim too high and you fail. Whereas if you, like, understand your limits, then you can act accordingly. Like, you don't have to be the smartest guy to pick a plan that is within your capabilities and then succeed at it. Yeah, I don't agree with Coulter about abortion. But I don't like the left on abortion either. Like, what is that stuff about it should be safe, legal, and rare? Like, why should it be rare? If it's not murder, what's wrong with it? And if it is murder, it should be illegal. So, like, they try to find a middle ground where there can't be one. Like, either you're, killing a human being who has the rights to life, liberty, etc., or you're not. And if you are, you know, that should be a crime. If you're not killing a person, then, like, why should it be rare? I mean, it costs a few $100s. It's a hassle. Like, you don't want it to be super common, but, like, it's not that big a deal. There's much worse problems in the world if it's not murder. Like, why are they personally against it? So many people have said they're personally against it, but they think they want it to be legal. Like, why? That makes no sense. Do they just hate sex? They want people to stop having sex? They want social pressure against abortion to discourage sex? Is that it? Because the left is also, like, hella pro promiscuity, so it doesn't make any sense. It's because they're, like, half intellectuals. So many of them, like, they partly try to follow reason, and they're like, reason says souls are a myth, therefore fetuses can be killed, no problem. And maybe they even think about it a little more and say, you know, before it has developed a brain, it can't possibly, like, suffer and have feelings and opinions and a mind, so there's no person to kill. But then these same people, like, maybe they half think that, but they also just half are normal people with common sense traditional ideas, and they're like, oh, well, abortion seems pretty nasty and bad, so they just compromise. Like, they're not full intellectuals, but they're not full, like, traditional prejudiced people or whatever. They sort of follow, like, parts of their religion and partly don't, and maybe they say they're atheists, maybe they don't, but there's, like, a serious lack of consistency in principles, which I do not respect. I have more respect for Christians who are more principled, even if I think they're mistaken about abortion. And I think the people who are more principled are correct more often than the people who aren't. And I prefer principles that are less intellectual than mine over just not having principles and just being, like, half and half. Trump is not particularly principled, by the way. Like, that's one of the things I don't love about him. Trump was my second choice candidate, by the way, after Ted Cruz. Cruz was more principled than Trump. And Cruz was more of a capitalist than Trump in terms of, like, economic policy, not, like, you know, personal business success. But his view of economics and political philosophy is more capitalist than Trump's. And if you want more info on that, read my blog post, Donald Trump is a Protectionist. You just search the post list for protectionist, and here we go. Donald Trump is a protectionist. This sounds like an exaggeration. I'm not an expert on either one. I followed the election politics a lot, but I started paying less attention to politics after Trump won. So I didn't pay much attention to the Syria thing. I don't even know if she's necessarily talking about... I think she's talking about Trump, right? But didn't, like, Obama bomb Syria as well? Which I also didn't pay a lot of attention to. And then the Sudan land, I'm also not an expert on. But this does not sound correct to me. I'm going to highlight it with red. This might be sarcasm. Maybe it's just sarcasm. Or it might be about Obama. See, Trump bombed Syria, but, like, Obama did too, right? Yeah, see, they both bombed Syria, so that makes it harder to tell who she's talking about. Like, she might mean Obama was actually Hitlerian, and then the left praised him. But it's not clear to me, because Trump also bombed Syria. So, I don't know. The virtue signaling industrial complex. Yeah, McCain is such a rhino. Republican in name only. Or was, not is. They wanted to be a one-term president. And it's gotta be exaggerating a bit. Like, there must have been some other things the Republicans said. But I guess the Dems also got mad about that particular remark. It was deeply wrong to want Obama to be a one-term president. That was tooth and claw politicking. Like, the left just make themselves look ridiculous with stuff like this. Is partisan before he's a patriot because he prefers a Republican win the next election? Yeah, the screaming against Trump is worse than against Obama or Clinton or Bush. Yeah, what? That didn't make a lot of sense. She said she wouldn't accept a White House invitation before she even had one to decline. She's just like, yeah, like pretending like she was in a position to decline one. She's really like getting ahead of herself on that one. Yeah, Trump's sexual behavior has been nothing like Bill Clinton's. Right, it's Trump winning the election is why this guy beat up his girlfriends. It's Trump's fault. That is that what they're saying? Jesus. So far this book is just examples without like principles and concepts to explain what's going on or why. And then more of that in some of her other books, like in Demonic. She talks about how the left is like a mob and what actually drives them and what the like psychological principles of them are. I liked this book especially because she talked about the French Revolution, and I've read a lot of things about the French Revolution, and most of them are really, really bad. And Coulter's take on it was actually reasonable. Like, she researched it and read some history and wasn't incompetent like a lot of other people. So that was nice to see. In general, she's pretty good with facts. You can go to my blog, you go archives, and then you go to scholarship. Here we go. And then the scholarship list has fact-checking and Coulter. And did I do Audios America fact-check? Anyway, I fact-checked like a bunch of her books in general, and Audios America in particular, and she did pretty well. Oops. That wasn't the link, that was the title. Also notable is in this one. Well, here. It's this. This is like other people trying to fact check and Coulter and complain, and all their complaints are like wrong and terrible. Also, when Coulter attacks Clinton, she has like the right to say that because she actually wrote a really good book, very soberly explaining his flaws. So she knows what she's talking about here. She actually wrote the book on it. This is one of her early books, and it has a more sober writing style. I'm putting all these links here, so people watching the videos, if they're interested in any of the links, they can easily find them. They don't have to like see what I Google and find it themselves. There's just going to be a document with all the relevant info. Build a bridge, not a wall. They're bragging like after it collapsed and people died? What the fuck? They just, after the collapse, he was bragging that he wasn't building a wall. He just built a bridge that killed people. Shameless. Well, it's break time. That was reasonably fun so far. It's a lot of little anecdotes about ways the left is awful, and it's good to be familiar with some of those. Like, it shouldn't be your only source of information, but you should have some familiarity with what that is. Like, your view of the world needs to take into account that these various facts are facts, like, and these various stupid things happen.